Lawyers have read it. What's the most ridiculous argument you've heard in court? I'm a lawyer. The most ridiculous argument I've seen was the one I actually made. One of my clients got busted cooking that good Breaking Bad. This was a very clear-cut case. They actually caught him in the middle of a cook. No way he was getting out of this one. Even worse, he was cooking at home and children were there. Yep, the DA loaded him up with felonies. There was no bail and he was being held in the county jail. My client asks me if he can get released for 24 hours so he can still get married. I tell him that I'll ask, but there's no way in hell they'll let him out. First, I ask the DA if they'll allow it. Nope, they laugh. So I file a motion with the court. Now, I knew the judge was a crusty old conservative family values kind of guy, who also had a raging hard-on for drug crime. There was no law involved. But I put together an argument about the sanctity of marriage, and how the state should encourage marriage at all times and that sort of thing. We have a hearing and I make the argument. The DA is totally opposed and calls it ridiculous, and the judge grants it. The judge actually decided to allow my client out for 24 hours to get married. He had to surrender at the county jail at 8 a.m. the next day and some other conditions, but still he was allowed out. Everyone is stunned. Nobody can believe it. The day of the wedding comes, my client gets out, gets married, and then goes back to the jail. Everything went exactly how it was supposed to, which is also pretty shocking. What an absolute banger to start out with. Yeah, this is absurd. The concept, the fact it was allowed, and the fact that it all went as planned. None of it makes sense, and yet it happened. Story 2. Former assistant state attorney / prosecutor here. This defendant is called up for arraignment, and the judge is telling him he's been charged with theft for stealing a roll of scratch-off tickets from a gas station. The judge informs the defendant that since the value of the tickets was over $300, therefore it's a felony rather than a misdemeanor. The defendant says to the judge, "But Your Honor, to be fair, the tickets were all losers," implying it's not theft at all. I was amazed at the ingenious yet futility of the argument. Hey, let him cook. Those tickets have no value. Not theft. Genius. Story 3. We were in trial, and opposing counsel was objecting to a document I was trying to enter into evidence through one of their witnesses. The witness had identified it as one of their business records, but opposing counsel objects. Jury is in the courtroom, so the judge had us approach. We do, and opposing counsel argues the authenticity of the document. I was a little surprised, so my response was, "Your Honor, this is their exhibit." Is counsel stating they submitted an inauthentic document to the court? Judge turns to counsel. "Are you submitting non-authentic documents?" Opposing counsel stammers out a no, and the document goes in. I was a little surprised they wanted to argue their own document wasn't authentic, just to keep me from getting it to the jury. Story 4. I am a lawyer. The state tried to argue that probable cause exists simply because there is a police report alleging the crime. From the fact that a police officer filed this report, it is a reasonable inference that the crime took place as described. Good, allegations are self-proving now. Well, wrap up court then. I guess no need to hear any more motions to dismiss ever. I wonder why no other prosecutor in 240 years of jurisprudence ever thought of that before a 25-year-old assistant district attorney who went to the worst law school in the state. Now, I am not a lawyer, but even I can tell this is absolutely absurd circular logic. Someone said it happened? How do you know it happened? Well, there's a report that someone said it happened. Perfect. Story 5. Made a left turn on a green turn arrow. A city bus ran a red and T-boned me. My car was a little Volkswagen Rabbit, so it just scooted me and I was perfectly fine. Driver pulls over, comes out and says, "The sun was in my eyes." I say, "I'm not hurt, thanks for asking." Police arrive and guess what? There was a literal busload full of witnesses. Everyone had the same story. They ran a red. City paid for my car, etc. They denied wrongdoing and went to court, which I had to attend along with a witness or two and the officer. Their defense? They had a migraine. Judge: "So I should let you off the hook because you had a bad headache and were driving into the sun?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'm so glad you understand." They got their commercial vehicle license revoked. Should have just taken the points. If I ever get into an automobile accident, I really hope the first thing out of the other person's mouth wasn't an excuse, or isn't an excuse, I mean. I would be so pissed off. Admittedly, I also hope for myself that I wouldn't do that. I have a tendency to make excuses at bad times. I'll try to be better about that. Thanks for reminding me, OP. Story 6. Law student, former professor's story. Defendant busted for possession of narcotics. They were in the pocket of his leather jacket. He argues the search was illegal, because with his buttery smooth leather jacket, there's no way the officer would have felt the drugs in his pocket during a pat-down, so he shouldn't have reached in the pocket to find the drugs in the first place. Judge asks to feel this jacket and the pockets. Defendant hands it to the bailiff. Judge finds more drugs in his pocket. Needless to say, it did not go well for him. Story 7. I was in the public gallery for this while studying law. I was not the lawyer. Leeds Crown Court back in the early 90s. 75-year-old foreign, yes, this is important, man was facing a preliminary hearing relating to charges that he had touched a 13-year-old relative inappropriately. His barrister made a successful plea for bail based upon this man being an established pillar of the immigrant community, and the judge asked the old man if he had anything to say before he was bailed until the next hearing in a month. He made 2 comments. 1. She was wearing very, very tight shorts, and I should not be held responsible because no real man could resist seeing something like that. The judge reminded him this was a preliminary hearing, not a trial, so he should wait until the trial to argue his case, especially statements that are far from exculpatory and are better suited to mitigation. 2. I cannot reappear in a month because I'm flying back to my home country tomorrow and won't be coming back. The barrister appeared just as shocked as the rest of us. The judge ordered the defendant's passport seized and he was remanded in custody until his trial. Can I just say, this is somewhat unrelated or tangential at the very least, but I hate when people get away with stupid, awful crimes. It's usually something intimate and bad because they are considered an upstanding pillar of the community. No, clearly not, or they wouldn't be here. Just means they're good at keeping their creepy on the down low. That doesn't mean they're a good person. Story 8. I am a lawyer. Had a female inmate claim she was touched by one of the guards. One of her most damning pieces of testimony was testifying to this large vertical scar he had on his chest from a heart operation. She continued to say that she remembered this huge scar from when he touched her. The guard got on the stand, took his shirt off, and had a tiny horizontal scar up on his shoulder. Case over. He had apparently told her one time that he had surgery and she assumed it would have left a giant scar and used that to make up her story. Story 9. This never made it to court. I asked my divorce lawyer what was the worst thing a client had asked him to argue. I was expecting a, I want the salad spinner sort of story. He had a client, a professor in his 70s, who was divorcing from his wife, also a professor in her 70s. They were both Jewish. His wife had a tattoo on her arm. It was a number, put there by the Nazis when they put her in a concentration camp in World War II as a child. Husband was born in the US, was not German. The German government was in the process of settling a case with the survivors. She had some amount of money, a 6-figure sum due to her. The husband wanted his lawyer to argue that he should get half the settlement money. Lawyer told him there was a special circle in hell for lawyers who ask for stuff like that, and he was not planning on ending up there. Let alone lawyers. There's a special circle in hell for men who ask for stuff like that. Or anybody, really. What disgusting, just despicable behavior. Like, sir, hear me out. Your ex-wife is getting some sort of compensation for one of the most awful, traumatic things to ever happen on the earth. And here you are thinking you deserve half of that monetary compensation because you married her. Yeah, I don't know what to say other than stay in your lane, buddy. She is not your property. And quite frankly, if you really loved her to begin with, I don't think you would ever ask that. Story 10. Prosecutor here had a case where a man assaulted his 6-year-old daughter because she wore, quote unquote, suggestive clothing and seemed to be asking for it. He tried to argue that, quote, you know, girls are just intimately active at a younger age now. I remember thinking, what would Dexter do? Anyway, man got convicted and is now serving 2 life sentences plus 100 years. Edit. The reason for that sentence is that he will not be eligible for parole. He was convicted of 2 counts of intimate assault, 2 counts of incest, and 2 counts of aggravated child touching. In my jurisdiction, you're eligible for parole on a life sentence after 30 years. Life and life without parole are 2 different sentences. Here, he was not eligible for life without parole. So in theory, at least, yes, he could serve 2 consecutive life sentences, which would be 60 years and then parole. Now, however, we are certain he never draws another breath as a free man. I've done several of these cases, and to me, they're much harder than murder cases because of the pressure. In this case, the man had no other complaints than this as a father. So if I lost, the poor girl goes back to dad. Story 11. Several years ago, I was doing a civil trial, personal injury, defending a woman who allegedly hit a bus matron with her car. We'd offered to concede a liability and just try damages. In other words, the jury wouldn't hear the circumstances of how the injury happened, just that we agreed my client caused it, and they would only decide the amount of damages. We had evidence that the plaintiff was significantly exaggerating her injuries. The plaintiff's attorney refused to agree to our concession, thinking that if the jury heard the circumstances, they would want to give even more money to punish my client. So we went to trial on liability. The plaintiff called one witness, her client, who testified that an older woman in a green car hit her. They rested and I moved for a dismissal for failure to prove a case. There was literally no evidence connecting my client to this incident, just an older woman in a green car. The plaintiff never bothered to call my client to the stand. The attorney told the judge that the bus driver had written down my client's license plate and gave it to the police. They never bothered trying to find the bus driver. The attorney asked if she could just put the police report in, and I objected that it was hearsay. The attorney then actually said, "Please just let me put this in. I haven't had work in a while and I got retained by a firm to try this case. I really need to win this." Of course, no, I didn't agree, and the judge dismissed the case. I felt a little bad, but that was maybe the worst presentation of a case I ever saw. I spoke with the jury afterwards and they all said they hated the plaintiff, didn't believe a word she said, and likely would have found in my favor anyway. Moral of the story, be prepared in court. Ah yes, the classic move in court. Begging. Good. That means your case is airtight. Story 12. I'm a prosecutor now, but I used to have a private practice where I did a lot of evictions. My usual landlord clients wouldn't even come into my office until their tenants had been behind for months. And most of the time, the tenants were defiant in their non-payment, so it wasn't difficult to not take pity on them. Anyway, one tenant was a particularly dumb guy. He usually came to court in a wife beater and cut-off jeans. We had a trial date set and my client and I showed up. Tenant did not. At the last second before the judge entered a default, some woman comes bursting into the courtroom and yells, "Daryl's on the phone!" The judge allows her to bring the phone up and we put tenant on speaker. He proceeds to ask the judge to delay the trial for 1 week because, "My brother got his head knocked inside out and is probably gonna die." I didn't buy it, but my client knew Daryl well enough to sense the stress and fear in his voice. I told the judge that we would allow the continuance, but only until the next available court day. The judge set it out for 1 week. I still didn't believe Daryl until that night my grandfather was in an accident and we had to rush to the hospital. As we're walking up the hallway, I see Daryl in a room with a bunch of people who dressed like him enough to obviously be family. When we get to my grandpa's room, he ended up not being as seriously injured as we originally feared. The first thing he said is, "You'll never guess what happened to the guy down the hall. Nurse told me his idiot brother dropped a tractor bucket on his head and it opened like a cracked egg. He's in a coma now." I relayed the news to my client and she felt sorry enough for Daryl that we signed an agreement stating he would clear out within 15 days and we would forgive all back rent owed. Oh wow, yeah, look, as far as excuses go, that's a pretty good one, man. What an absolutely horrific accident to happen and have to see the aftermath of too. Daryl, I'm sorry, man. That sucks. I'm glad that this landlord seemed forgiving, though. I hear a lot of stories about bad landlords, especially nowadays. So this one gets some points from me, I think. Story 13. What I dub the surprise party defense. In a hearing for an order of protection in which ex-wife is trying to get an order of protection against ex-husband who has been stalking her. They have a high school-aged child together. Ex-husband tries to argue against the order of protection, saying they may need to communicate about the child. The judge points out that they can communicate through the child, and also that other family members have been put in place by the juvenile court to be intermediaries regarding pickup, drop-off, etc. The ex-husband has a brilliant light bulb idea. "Judge, what if I need to throw my son a surprise party, and I need to keep it a secret from everyone? But his mom still needs to know so she doesn't throw a party the same day." In other words, while I admit I had been stalking my ex-wife and there are grounds to grant an order of protection, you should not grant that order, just in case I need to throw a surprise party one day. What made it was how clever he thought the argument was. Thus, the surprise party defense was born. Story 14. Wasn't the other lawyer, but his client. Took the stand in a retail theft trial. Claimed he didn't steal a couple of salmon fillets on purpose. He was just so flustered by a phone conversation with his girlfriend that he accidentally slipped them into the pockets of his jacket. In a part of the store the loss prevention officer called Shoplifter Alley because it's a blind spot for the cameras. And then he walked out without realizing it. It's not like it was a candy bar or something small, it was 2 salmon fillets. I asked him, "Have you ever done anything like that before?" "No." "Have you ever seen anyone anywhere, ever, put fish like that into their pocket in your entire life?" "No." Mercifully, the jury did not buy his ludicrous story and found him guilty. 2 salmon fillets into the pockets of your jacket? I can't say I've ever done it either. But I kinda gotta respect how the guy was just like, "No, I haven't seen that before, you're right." Or at least that's how I picture it when OP wrote like 5 dots and then the word no. Story 15. Not a lawyer, but I was called as a witness to testify for the state regarding an accident that I was involved in. I was hit from behind by a large construction dump truck while sitting at a red light behind another vehicle. It was a 4-lane roadway that merged into 2 after the light, and I was in the right lane heading north. The light turned green and I hadn't moved yet because I felt the vehicle tap mine. Next thing I know, I'm moving forward, and I begin to panic that something's wrong with my car. Well, apparently the driver of the dump truck didn't realize he'd hit me and pushed me straight through the intersection. My car ended up doing a 180 and I was facing south, heading towards a very deep ditch. I was blaring my horn and hitting my brakes and trying to avoid going into the ditch, because my son wasn't even 1 month old at the time and in the back seat along with my dog. I managed to pull the parking brake and we slide to a stop just at the edge of the road before the ditch. Husband turns and asks, "Do I need to call 911? I tell him no because I see the dump truck pull over to the side a bit north of me and I figure he'll come out to exchange insurance. Lo and behold, the driver took off after about 15 seconds of sitting there. I was stunned but immediately told hubby to then call 911. We'd been in a hit and run. Sheriff comes. People from the company that hit us come. Witnesses who saw the whole thing tell the sheriff what happened and company apologizes. They start looking for the driver through the GPS on the vehicle. Company ended up paying $2,000 in damages to my car and paid for a brand new car seat. Pictures were taken by all parties as well of the damage present to my car. So imagine my surprise when I got subpoenaed to appear in court to testify against this guy. I can't believe the nerve of this jerk that hit me, ran, and had the balls to testify not guilty to the charge. The day comes and I show up in court. Give my testimony, witness gives hers, sheriff gives his. A bit of banter back and forth about a surveillance video from a gas station. The driver obtained it, but his lawyer didn't bother to enter it into evidence before the trial. Judge won't allow her to show the video because state hasn't had time to review it. We finally get to hear the driver's testimony, and he gave the best excuse that could be summed up like this. "I didn't see her car as I was pulling up to the light. I was given enough distance to stop to the car in front, but I didn't see her. I didn't hear the horn blaring because I was in a diesel vehicle and didn't realize I'd hit her or that I was involved in an accident, and that's why I didn't stop. I'd been having brake issues and thought it was just my brakes acting up." He apparently thought he could win his case by testifying that because he didn't see me and didn't realize he was in an accident, he shouldn't be charged. Yeah, sorry, jerk. Ignorance of events doesn't make you any less liable in the eyes of the law. Judge pronounced him guilty and the guy rolled his eyes like he couldn't believe it. I'm still waiting to find out if he tries to appeal it. Story 16. I could tell plenty of these about my own clients, but I like this one. A lady has an injury/comp case. It's for her upper back and, of course, complex regional pain syndrome. She decides she needs the insurance company to pay for a special mattress for her, like a $6,000 memory foam, with heat and massage and 1,000 other features. And not just a twin, she needs a California king, because of course her layabout unemployed boyfriend needs to sleep there too. We spend months litigating this damn thing. Finally, she buys it herself and my client agrees to give her $1,500 just to be done with it. The judge takes myself and opposing counsel aside and says he's going to screw us if we ever say the word mattress in his court again after wasting all this time. It was that ridiculous. Not 3 months go by, and the case comes on for another hearing. After exhausting all chiropractic care allowed under the law, her doctor was seeking a variance to get some additional chiropractic. We get to court, and I'm arguing it should be denied, etc. Judge turns to her and says, "Ma'am, why do you feel the need you need more chiropractic care?" She pauses for a minute and then says, "I'm having a lot of trouble sleeping on my mattress." I think I saw smoke coming out of his ears. Wait, what's even being said on this one? Is she saying that the mattress that she bought for $6,000 makes her need more chiropractic care? Or that it isn't helping as much as she thought it was? That seems more likely. It would be wild if she was saying that the mattress was causing her to need more chiropractic care, though. Either way, $6,000 mattress seems unnecessary. People really try to squeeze everything they can out of these worker comp cases, don't they? And I feel like that sucks, right? Because it probably makes it way harder for people who have actual cases for workers' compensation because of all these ones where people are just trying to get as much as they can and they don't really need it. So yeah, this sucks. That's my judgment. Anyway, that's all the time for today. You know what doesn't suck though? All of you watching this. So thank you so much. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.